Very, very warm welcome to this fire chat discussion on the topic of a strategic response to changing skills paradigm. And it's a pleasure to be amongst all of you today and finally meet everyone in person after 2 years. So great to see you all. So developing a workforce with the digital and transferable skills that you need and the ability to adapt quickly in a world of constant change does not happen organically or by chance. The onus is on the talent, the people to collaborate and drive the upskilling and reskilling process. In preparing for a world where competencies and not degrees are the most important factors when filling a job, employers are looking at reskilling and upskilling their employees. This culture of continuous learning is expanding beyond age groups and experience levels, where people are going for higher education at later stages as well. The economies are already changing in response to digital innovation, and the workforce has to adapt quickly in response. And to remain a winner against such market forces, organizations need to invest in skill expansion. In this exciting fireside discussion, we will explore some critical aspects related to upskilling and reskilling, like skills training within existing domains and without the need to switch verticals or careers, the need for reskilling or upskilling to match the skills needed at later career stages, and looking beyond the degree and focusing on acquiring domain and industry-specific skills through industry-special programs. And with great pleasure, I would now like to invite and introduce our speakers to you once again. So we have Mukhvinder Bains, Associate Director and Lead for Learning and Transitions, Accenture India. Hi, Mukhvinder, thank you for joining us. Next, we have Parag Bengali, Director, HR and Finance, Bislady International. Hi, Parag. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And finally, I have next to me Divyendu Bose, Senior Director of Alumni Engagement and Admissions and Financial Aid, Indian School of Business. Hi, Divyendu. Thank you for joining us. So without further ado, let's jump into the first question that I have for our panelists today. And it's a very exciting question, and I request all of our panelists to throw some spotlight on this. Let's start with the basics and understand how we see reskilling and upskilling and how these two techniques can help your organization be better prepared for future industry change. Mukhvinder, I'd like to come to you first.
Okay, thank you everyone for being here. We thought that turn is not going to come only, right? We just kept waiting and the questions kept coming for the earlier panel, so we thought maybe our turn's not going to come. But thank you for staying back. I think the important piece, and I'm part of Accenture, and I'll try and still keep it much more broad-based than specifically to what we are doing. I think one of the things that we specifically are doing is we're stepping away from calling reskilling. We're just saying upskilling and new skills that are required. Basically what we're saying is that you're not unlearning. And then I remember a few years ago, there was a lot of conversation about one of the things that individuals need to know is how to unlearn. Yeah, we're trying to figure out, is unlearning really what is required? Or basically what you're saying is you have certain skills and what is required tomorrow is probably an up of that one, an addition on that one, and that's what you're trying to do. And I think that's going to be the key focus. I mean, each one of us as part of learning. The other important piece, and just from the larger new skilling as well as upskilling is concerned, and and I'm going to keep using reskilling because that's one of the topic points here. But how do we ensure that both as organizations and as learners are looking forward and trying to figure out what is it that would be required in a couple of years of time? What is required today is already done. Yeah. How is the technology changing? What are the things that would be required tomorrow? And how do you ensure that you are in front of all that? I think that would be, in my opinion, the starting point. And we at Accenture, work very closely with some of the large institutions to see what are some of the new trends that are coming in. And therefore, are we ready for some of those trends? I mean, obviously, last couple of years have been a complete blur, and therefore we've not been able to, figure out, that this kind of skill of managing people remotely or virtual would ever be required. I mean, and that kind of took everyone by surprise. But I think both organizations and learning teams need to ensure that they're prepared for something like this as it comes.
Absolutely. So have you been able to find the answer of what the future of skills would be like?
I don't think there is an answer. I think the answer lies in what our clients are moving towards. Yeah. and what is the expectations that clients are having from businesses, and are we ready to do that? I remember in one of the specific technology areas, as I said, we work with a large US technology institution, and we keep talking to them and we keep interacting with them to understand what is the new technology that's going to come and which is starting now,
Yes.
but which actually come in force in about a couple of years. And can we start getting our people ready with those skills today so that by the time the technology becomes popular, you already have people which are ready for that. And I think that's the trick, being ahead of the curve, being ready for something that may hit us in a couple of years of time, and then go back and bridge that gap.
Great points. Thanks, Mukwinder. Parag, you come from a different industry. Accenture is into technology. How does it look for you? How are you looking at reskilling and upskilling in the current context?
So I have a slight different view to look at the employees, we at Bisleri. Now, normally when you look at the employee, we always look at the employee cost in P&L, which is a very common way of looking at the employee, but we try to look at differently. As all of you know, employee is an human, the most important part of organization as a valuable asset. It is not reflected in the balance sheet, it is an intangible one. But we understand that employees play a big role in the organization and its growth. So we are always working towards skill development. Now, whether we use it upskilling or reskilling as a way we want to put it, but at the end of the day, the whole motto is to make them satisfied in their job role and whatever they work. Because ultimately we all know that they spend almost 12 to 14 hours in the office and balance at home. We need to make them feel at home. So this kind of skill set development, if we continuously do it and all organizations are doing it, this is very important for them to learn and change themselves. That's one part of it. Other part of it is, okay, nowadays all employees would like to do something which is different than what they are doing. They would always aspire for something different. It is not unlike previously, if I am doing a one particular job, I'll keep on doing for lifetime. I will prefer to do something different or the same job in a different way. That is what their requirements are coming out as we go on. And even COVID has taught us all these things that, keeping on one line is not okay. If you don't start to know something different than what you are doing, or same thing if you do in a much different way, it's always good. So I think we at Bisleri are trying to be more innovative to make them more happy towards at their workplace and try to reorient their skills.
Yeah, so it's about understanding their aspirations, which
Absolutely,
are very important,
absolutely.
and aligning it to the business aspirations.
Absolutely.
Great points, thanks, Parag. Dibyendu, I want the academic perspective now from you. How does it feel to be amidst this entire change that's happening?
For us, we have to serve across industries, whether it be technology, whether it be any other industry. And the way we are trying to look at it is constantly work with different industry leaders. So today, if I talk about ISB, ISB itself, more than 500 CXO level alums, and we are reaching out to them, trying to get insights from them that how their industry is shaping up, what are the new skill sets they are looking at. Also, we are talking to a whole gamut of recruiters. So suppose for our flagship MBA program, which is called the PGP, when we talk to recruiters earlier, the same consulting firms, possibly the McKinseys, the BCGs, and the Bains, or Accenture for that matter, they would specify the type of skills they would value in the candidates. And today, the shift has happened. They are preferring people with some level of technology understanding, technology background. So the skill sets like having a knowledge about digital marketing, having a knowledge about business process transformation, all of that becomes relevant when they are trying to recruit candidates from ISB. And accordingly, our curriculum is also evolving. We are working at the different elements, and we are looking at that how the industry need is evolving, and we are trying to keep pace with it. Another interesting concept, just to add to the new skill and the upskill part, is that the lifelong learning element. So earlier the concept was once, especially in the Indian education system, you once go to college, you get yourself educated, skilled, and finally you end up in the industry working for life. But now the concept has completely changed. Your entire career is divided into different stages, and every stage you have to invest in your learning and try and see how the ecosystem around you or industry that you are part of evolving, and accordingly calibrate your learning, upskill or reskill yourself.
Great points again. I think it's a huge need for academia and industry partnership, and I think ISB is doing a great job at that. And it's about understanding what skills the industry will require in the future and preparing your students from there on itself so that they're ready to join the workforce the moment they graduate. I think that's going to be very, very important. So thanks for sharing that. I'll come to you again, Mupinder. We're talking about whether you're in tech or have your core competencies in sales, finance, or any other function. Developing a domain or industry specific skill to understand the nuances of the changes in the business environment has also become imperative today. How can organizations make this happen?
I think what is, and interestingly, just to add at the lifelong learner part that Devendu was mentioning, I think that won't change ever. I mean, while we all thought that one would continue with just one skill that they have, and my 15 years with Accenture now, I've probably done about 7 different roles, 6 different roles. Yeah, and these were significantly apart. I did an outsourcing learning role. I did actually ran business for a few clients on finance and procurement. I did leadership development that I'm currently doing. So therefore, there were multiple roles that I played as a. So therefore, you will have to. I think it's important for both the learning teams and the organizations and HR and everyone to come together and create opportunities where people can work on those skills. Yeah, I think and something which is also changing significantly is because, most of the folks are sitting at home. How do you ensure that you're building that culture that you need to learn as an ongoing basis? And classroom is not the only option. Bringing them into a room, while a lot of organizations are looking at that as a possible one way to bring people back into offices, because they're just not coming back at this point of time. But the learning also is, and whatever that you do, your work is also bits and pieces of learning because you're constantly upskilling yourself as you're doing. These are those moments which will eventually help you learn and take you to the next level. I think those are the things that are extremely, extremely important. The other part of, the domain, I think there are multiple roles that are there within the organization, and therefore individuals need to decide what is that they would want to do. And there are some who would want to kind of go deep into that particular domain, really specialize and kind of, take it from there. There are other roles that would require multiple skills that you need to be. I mean, somebody who's in sales would need a domain knowledge, I mean, whether you like it or not. When you're going to an organization and if you don't understand, if I was to go back to Bisleri and say, I have no clue how your logistics work, yeah, it won't make sense. I can't go back and sell logistics to them. So therefore, not only that I need to understand how an FMCG works, but I need to understand how logistics in an FMCG works. A logistics in a coal industry or a steel is very, very different, or for somebody like Cadbury is very, very different than what probably it would be for others. So I think it will be a combination of skills that would be required for individuals. And one of the areas that we are focusing is, how do you ensure that people have enough mind space to learn the length and breadth of it? Yeah, and how do you ensure that you leverage the right set of people? Something else that we're also trying to do is, and partially successful is, you don't have to go back and create all skills internally. Find the right set of people who can help you build those particular skills. You should look for the right partners. I mean, just like the way we would expect as an organization for organizations to come back to us as right partners for their different things. Similarly, we just can't go back and say, we will create everything on our own and we will do it. It doesn't make sense. And therefore you work with the startup ecosystem, you work with the partners, and you go back and build. And I met a couple of partners outside who work with us as part of our consulting extended workforce, and we take help from them.
Yeah. Great points, Bhupinder. I think it's about finding the relevance of skills, if I have heard you right. It's about what skill is relevant for what role, and then upskilling and reskilling your workforce based on that. So thanks for sharing that. Dibendu, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so what we have noticed is, as Manvita mentioned, that one is the general management skills, where you have to have an idea, whether it be the communication, the sales, the marketing, the finance bit. That is, so for that, generally people opt early in their career for the MBA program and later in their career for the exec MBA programs. But there is another element, like the industry insight part. So, what we have seen globally also, last month I was in the US in a GMAC Global Leadership Conference. There is, whether it be earlier it was in Europe, that masters in certain specializations are picking up dramatically, and even in the US that trend is picking up. Say, for example, data analytics. I was talking to somebody from the University of Cincinnati. The type the industry, the type of compensation or the recognition people are getting in the industry is just remarkable. So even in our case at ISB, what we are doing is that we have different research centers, and those research centers are working closely with the industry. So in different areas, be it business analytics or infrastructure or operations and supply chain management, or even in public policy. And we see increased traction over there, that people who have already have some level of general management skill, but they want to deep dive into their particular industry. Say for healthcare, through this pandemic, healthcare played a very crucial role. So the people want to understand what are the latest trends, what is it that would make them and their organization successful. And that's how the academia as well as the industry are also collaborating in terms of developing that skill set and empowering people.
So industry focus, I think domain specific, job role specific, basically niche skills are coming up now that people have to upskill and reskill themselves into. So great points. Thanks for sharing that. Parag, I'd like to come to you now. Talent requires developing new abilities that complement and strengthen existing ones. This is an ongoing process that goes beyond age, position, and experience. What are we doing about this at an organization level? Is the onus for this on the learner, or is it something that needs to be made part of the larger business agenda?
See, it is part of a larger business agenda of business, because ultimately the growth of any company is driven by the employees who are working. So unless and until employees are skilled enough to work, the organization cannot grow. So it's now both the sides. Organization will put its effort towards making them grow in their skills for their vision of attaining their growth and the things. And employees will also have to give their best getting that skill which has been provided by the company for their own growth also. Because now both are parallel to each other. It cannot happen that employees are growing and company is not growing, and company is growing, employees are not growing. It was a past which is no longer exists. So unless both work close to each other, nothing is possible. The only thing is that company has to find out what kind of training and skill is required by those employees. Otherwise, employees will take the thing which is not required by him. And employee also should give full attention and full concentration on the skills that is being provided to him. Otherwise, he will remain as it is and he will not contribute to company. And as you go on, is going to be a good monitoring reviews by all the companies looking at the trends that are going on, and the generation gap is getting reduced. So the newer generation will have far more talent and far more faster way of innovative ideas to think compared to the existing ones. So if the existing employee don't change by the new skills that has been provided and they don't adapt to those kind of changes, then they will be easily replaced by the younger generations, because we all know the employee opportunities are limited compared to the what otherwise the population is all about. So I think it's both that employee both have to give, but yes, owners has to be more on the organization to ensure that skills are delivered to the employee. But employees will also have to change their mindset to accept the changes and then take the new skills and move ahead.
Yes, Mupinder, you want to add
So
something?
I think there are two parts, and the other one is, and each one of us who's learning an HR profession, I think we need to ensure that we get the seat on the table. Unless and until we don't force ourselves to have that seat, we will always remain or will be perceived as somebody who's only supporting. And unfortunately for us, but I know of a lot of organizations that I meet and leaders I talk to. Among the first things that get cut is our learning budgets. Yeah, and I remember talking to some of the leaders in some of the earlier years ago when we used to connect like that. Fortunately for us, we haven't never touched our learning budgets. We spend an average of about $1 billion a year on learning, and we never go back and say, let's reduce learning budget. Yeah. In fact, whenever there is a slowdown, the focus is how can we get more money so that people have some time available, and how can we quickly go back and skill them and be ready the moment the turn happens. Moment the upswing happens, your people need to be ready, and therefore that's one thing that's important. The other thing is for us, as business leaders, and again, when you get the seat on the table, it's easier to go back to our business leaders and tell them, don't touch my money. Figure out a different way, different place where you can cut it. Help me, because these are the individuals which will be ready as the upswing happens. And if you don't skill them now, if you don't invest now, we will lose out when the upswing happens.
yeah.
And then we'll start to scramble, not only just start getting people together, then trying to go back and train them, get them skilled. I think that's another big one
That's
that
a very great
each one of
point.
us will have to address.
Yeah, I think yes, I totally agree that learning budgets get impacted the first. So it's, if you create and make it a business agenda, then your business leaders will understand how imperative it is. So great point there. Anything you'd like to add to that, Dibendu?
Yeah, I would say at two levels. One is at the organizational level. Organizations know that they have to invest in the people, and also in terms of upskilling them, but also that serves as a retention tool, because when companies feel that they are cared for, the organization is helping them grow. It's always an advantage. It's a win-win situation. And we have seen that even in our short duration executive education programs, there is like a lot of company sponsorships that is coming in. In terms of the, I would say the bigger programs, say the executive MBA programs, that's been an interesting trend over the last 3, 4, 5 years, that we are seeing that people who have possibly missed out on going to the a B school for getting that coveted MBA degree, now they are opting for that. Suppose they are 10, 15 years, 20 years into already the corporate careers, but they want to now reskill themselves and find a different route.
Yes.
I'll give you an example. So we have one of our weekend MBA programs called PGP Pro. One of the students, so it's a weekend MBA, so you don't need to leave your job, and during the week you do your job, during the weekend you study, and then next Monday again you apply that learning to solve your company related problems. So one of the candidates, he came from a corporate strategy background, and then after this program, he went into product management. So when people are recognizing which are the fields that are emerging and holding a brighter future, they also are opting for such programs to make that shift.
True. I think again the whole concept of being a lifelong learner, having a continuous learning culture, and using learning as a retention tool. I think that's also very, very important, because people will stick with you when they know that you care about their careers and care about their learning journey. So great point. Moving on to our last questions, and I'll come to all our panelists and I would request you to briefly answer that. So research has shown that the need for reskilling has given rise to innovative learning strategies. Could you share some of these inventions that you have either implemented or are planning to implement in the coming future? So Mukhvinder, I'd like to start with you first.
Sure. And and there's lots of hype around metaverse, and everyone's talking about that and saying, what will that change? I think some of the skills or some of the areas that one can use metaverse, and we use that not very extensively, but we've started to move in that particular direction. Now, whether that is starting with the newer set of people that are coming in, interestingly, and we were making this for one of our clients and some of our internal resources, the people who are expected to work with coal industry. Yeah, and therefore what we've done is we've used metaverse to create a program where they can actually walk into a coal mine and get the feel of exactly what is happening. How does each of those pieces work? How do you experience? Because as a consultant, I have no clue what's happening inside. And therefore, if one can go back and use tools like that, innovative tools like that, to upskill your people, yeah, to make them understand what exactly is happening there, and go back and use that for going back and making those changes to business, supporting them, I think that's going to be important. While, currently, and of course it's in very, very early stages of what it can do and what it can't do, but there are opportunities that are there, and, organizations that are a little ahead are starting to explore and starting to experiment with something like this.
Great. Thanks, Mukhvinder. Parag, would like to hear from you. Any initiatives you can discuss with us?
So we have started an initiative called as Project Rise in our setup. It is basically to ensure that the good employees are retained by the company, they are motivated by the company, because only money doesn't retain. They also need something else as they go on. So we have started this project based on several competencies, which includes the delegation, change management, empowerment, responsibility, monitoring, etc. The whole purpose of doing this project is to find out the new talents in the organizations or the existing talent in the organizations whom we can groom for a better strategic role in the organizations. That is first. And as we say, we are also moving towards multi-skill approach. So how can we move one person from one field to another field by giving the adequate skill required for the same? And also making the role more prominent than the positions. That is what we are moving on to it. And it's a great change management technique that we are using now. Because for a company like Bisleri, which is have water as a main product, we all have to ensure that they get adequate role as we move on, which satisfies them to continue in the organizations and also help them to motivate in their work.
Great.
That is the movement which we are doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Divendra, your final words.
Sure. So there is another element called the bite-sized learning. So it's like exactly almost real time. Say a salesperson needs understanding of a product. That's the bite-sized learning. So that's something. And then you can also do gamification in terms of training your employees. So those are some of the new ways of imparting that knowledge. And a few months back, I was in a conference with one edX founder, Anant Agarwal, and he had joined from the US. And he mentioned something very relevant, the micro-credentialing part. There will be, into the future, we are also looking at you have those bite-sized learning and get micro-credentials, and then you stack it up. Yes. There's a stack that you get, and you accordingly go up the learning curve. Another aspect is also the certification part. Say today, if you think about you want to be you want to head the marketing role, you have to have an understanding of the digital marketing piece. Absolutely. And you may be a senior person, but you have to revisit. You have to do the certification, whether it be Google or social media. Every element becomes relevant.
Sure. Great, thanks. Thank you so much. So I think I'd like to conclude by saying that the learning landscape is evolving continuously. Oh, sorry, am I being told to go? Okay, so the learning landscape is evolving continuously. Skills are changing, new skills are coming up every day. It's about... I'm being asked to go now completely. No, but sorry, I'll just wrap up. So new skills are coming up. Organizations are noticing what they need to do. I think they are coming forward and creating practices, initiatives that can help their workforce be prepared for the future, have more relevant skills for the future. We don't know, the future might still be uncertain, but understanding what works, what relevant skills are required is going to be the way forward. We need to have a continuous learning culture. All of us need to be lifelong learners. I think age and position does not matter anymore. It's about upskilling and reskilling and being prepared for the future. So thank you, Mukhvinder, thank you, Parag, and thank you, Divendra. It was a great conversation. Thank you.